Welcome back to the Prepared Mind channel. If this is your first trip here, welcome, welcome, welcome. And for everybody, share these videos. I recommend binge watching the Prepared Mind Network channel. Everything we do, don't forget about the R Syndicate. Do not forget about the preparedmind.club, because at the club you can get whatever it is you think you might need and probably get some good ideas of things you weren't thinking about. Anyways, shit hitting the fan. That's why we're here. We're preppers. Or maybe you're thinking about being a prepper. Maybe this video will cause you to look at the world a little bit differently. And I think that's what we all need to do, is understand that the world that's presented on television, one that's solid, reliable, trustworthy, where there's justice and peace, right? Maybe it's not that world after all. Maybe that thing we see on the television or the movie screen, right, or your computer screen for that matter, is a facade, a fake. It's faux. It's lies put in your eyes, right, to get you to do what? To buy something someone else is selling. So what am I selling? Well, if you think the world is a little bit precarious of a place to live in and you should have preps, well, I'm selling the idea that you should be prepped. And you can buy your stuff anywhere. I don't give a shit. I really don't. We have the Prepared Mind Network and, of course, the club that you guys pay for to get items as inexpensively as possible. And it's your choice. It pays the bills, but it doesn't pay all my bills. It doesn't get everything done. But I wanted to, with your guys' help, look at everything and try to do the best we can with what we've got. And I want to send a special thanks out to Jolene, who's behind the scenes, administrates the channel, works on stuff. She's over in the Bay Area. I'm way up in Northern California. And the Prepared Mind Network and the R Syndicate is worldwide. It's across the country. And it's all of us working together. And I want to thank you all for participating in it. And especially Jolene, who silently works behind the scenes to get a lot of stuff done. Thank you, Jolene. Anytime I need something, she's right there, down in the Bay Area, putting up with her own type of special shit hitting the fan. Anyways, and so it's an awareness of the whole country as well as our neighborhood. It's an awareness of the whole world. And people say, John, it's just not as bad as you say. No, you can point to this story and that story. The world's not falling apart, can't happen, won't happen. Well, I'm here to make the argument that it can happen and that it is happening and that it has been falling apart for some time now. And you go, well, we got bad places. Well, I want to point out that it's not just one or two countries with some issues. It's not. Let's just start. I got a little list here, but it's a significant list. Okay, let's start. South Africa. How many of you have been paying attention to South Africa? When was the last time you heard a mainstream news story or an expose or a documentary on South Africa? Do you know what's going on in South Africa? Well, there's a socialist government that's taken over. Some might call it a communist government. What are they doing? They are having basically a shit it's the fan civil war, and the government is passing laws saying, if you are white, it is a racial shit it's the fan. And it's very disheartening, and I wanted to lead off with South Africa because race shouldn't matter. But there's people who want revenge, and there's people who are motivated by jealousy, envy, greed. And so they're passing laws that say you can just take white people's property, and people are having to defend their lives. That's what's going on in South Africa. Why isn't this, atrocity being talked about every day? Now, when apartheid was being stopped, which was an opposite idea, right? That whites were superior to blacks. I guess that's what apartheid was about. I forget now. It's been so long that it's been gone. But this seems like a revenge, a reverse apartheid, a reverse discrimination, a reverse thievery. Anyways, none of it's good. I don't like any of it. I don't care what the cause was, but this is about shit hitting the fan, and it's happening in South Africa. right? From your chair, from your couch, from your living room, no problem. You're in South Africa, it's scary. Well, how about Zimbabwe? What problems have they been having? Well, they've had nothing but currency problems. They had their own civil war several years ago. But how's life in Zimbabwe doing? Is it great? How about a lot of the African nations? How about Sierra Leone, the Congo, where evil bastard corporations are exploiting the people in the land, and also where Ebola is continuing to be a problem. Disease, we've got a number of shit it's the fan factors we've talked about for several years now. It could be medical, it could be a resource, it could be political in nature, it could be a man-made disaster, a natural disaster. And we've got medical pandemics in Africa. We've got political chaos and revolution. We've got financial or monetary issues. And without even leaving the continent, we can talk about Yemen. There's a war being fought. It's more of an imperial war being fought over Yemen. Well, how about Sudan, right? Where people are just killing each other. Remember that movie, Black Hawk Down? The problems that were happening then are still happening now. And if you think they're going to get better before they get worse, we probably have another thing coming. One of the concepts I like to discuss is if the first world countries, that would be China, US, Japan, the EU, right? If these first world segments of the world are doing great, we're producing a lot of stuff. A lot of wealth is being created, products being created, and there's a trickle-down effect to second world countries that go down to third world countries even. So a second world country, an example of that would be, let's say, Brazil. And the reason I'm going to say they're second world is because they're not a economic powerhouse, even though they're up and coming. They've changed it from second world to emerging market as far as terminology goes. So it doesn't sound like they're second class. They're not second class, right? But they're a developing country and a developing system. So if a superpower nation, we'll just, instead of calling the US first world and China first world, let's call them superpowers. Superpowers do well, then emerging markets do well, developing nations do well, and then we'll just stick with third world for third world because they really are in a class that's very disadvantaged. There's small nations, isolated nations, and corrupt nations. But when we're doing well, developing countries do well, and then third world nations, they get a trickle-down effect as well. If we're having problems up here in the superpower class with our economies, with production, with standard of living, then it's not quite as good for developing nations, and third world nations suffer even more. So the point is that third world nations, they're really going to get hurt when we go into a recession, and we're sliding there and have been slowly sliding there. Right? Lebanon has been a nation that's had trouble my whole life, and it is a serious problem now. Hezbollah, terrorist organization, is firing rockets and missiles at Israel. Yeah. And guess what? Israel is striking back. They assassinated their terrorist leader. If you're a Hezbollah member, you think Israel is terrorist. You think Netanyahu is a terrorist leader. It depends on what side you're standing, who you're going to call a patriot and who you're going to call a terrorist. King George, back in the 1770s, thought of American patriots as terrorists, right? He called them thugs. He called them rogues. He called them outlaws. He called them criminals. That's how they thought of them. That's how they thought of America in England back then. If you didn't like them, they're terrorists. That's a developing colony over there. It's a third world colony, and they're a bunch of terrorist thugs, right? They don't want to pay their taxes and yada, 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 right? We're seeing this again. So Lebanon, let's go right next door to Syria. Syria, yeah, Trump has done some great things and pulled a bunch of troops out, and then he said, well, we're keeping your oil because we can't have, the people of Syria have their oil fall into the wrong hands. So it really has this imperialist feel to it. But you've got Russia there, the United States there, Europe is trying to take part in stuff, Turkey's trying to take part. It's a fucking mess. Imagine if our country, the United States of America, had Canada, next door neighbor, so concerned that they called the United Nations and NATO, because yeah, they're touching the North Atlantic too, right? NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, said we need help here. So you got Canada on the north being invaded by terrorists out of Mexico. We got NATO hitting the East Coast and Russia hitting the West Coast with China because they're here to help. Is that what we need? Well, apparently that's the treatment Syria's getting, right? It's not good around the world. Not far from there, hey, we're going to move down the list. How about Iran? They have been in a near shit-it's-the-fan economic crisis for decades now because of sanctions, because of a belief that they are terrorists. And personally, I don't give a shit. Once again, race, religion, color, I don't give a fuck. Can't everyone just leave everyone else the fuck alone? Why does everyone, as soon as they get a little power, a little military, a little money, have to start dicking with other people? Well, my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather used to own that property over there, and so I think it should still be mine. It's ridiculous here, but here we are, and that is shit, it's the fan. It's greed, corruption. It's the opportunity to hurt other people. It's old grudges. You know, how long does a civilization have to exist? By civilization, I mean humanity crawling out of the caves going, hey, let's try building stuff again, right? Again. After 2,000 years, 3,000 years, 4,000 years, 5,000 years, everyone has a grudge against everyone for everything from all fucking time, and no one can just let it go. Right? Hey, you got electricity, you got air conditioning, you got refrigeration, and you still can't get along, still can't, what's good enough for you? Same with the leaders of these countries. What, one fucking castle isn't enough? You know, a 100-foot, 200-foot, 300-foot yacht isn't enough for you, oil shake? You've got to have more? You know, it's incredible. Before I get too wound up just on that. Okay, how about Afghanistan? We went there to fix the problems. Or did we go there for natural resources? Or did we go there to kill bin Laden? Well, you know, we pulled out now. What's going on in Afghanistan? Well, you know, you've got Iran's got their proxies in there, and these other groups have their proxies in there. They're fighting over Afghanistan. Same with Iraq. I thought we fixed all the problems. You know, they're having their shit hit the fan. All of them are right on the edge of going into total chaos. But what's holding them up, honestly? What is holding up all of these countries so that they continue to operate at least partially? Because they have food, water, shelter, whatever clothing they needed, right? Medicine. They've got just enough to keep them going so they don't devolve into absolute total chaos. And in some cases they have. And in some areas it is total chaos. How about Libya, for example? Yeah, let's just overthrow the leader and kill everyone and cause mayhem and you know, ridiculous. Well, let's get away from there and let's just go over to South America. Let's have some fun in South America. I mentioned Brazil. They're having their riots and their issues in Brazil, their banking problems, their corruption issues. Down in Argentina, well, they got tired, right? Upset. People wanted more. They feel that the 1% is getting too much, so they re-elect a socialist who's going to destroy shit. Their stock market value dropped in half. Their currency went to shit. Instantly, one day. They're right on the edge of shitting the fan, and Venezuela has been in shit it's the fan. What did they do? They elected Maduro, right? And they have had a socialist who went in there and just trashed everything. And a couple of years later, the U.S. government and others say, well, that's not a legitimate government anymore because they did a poor job. Right? Someone else's judgment of someone else determines whether or not they're doing a good job. I mean, we know that Maduro and the socialists did a piss poor job. But, you know, everything gets to a point and we go, well, now we have to get involved because it's our national security, yada, yada, yada. Well, guess what? Right? It costs us money to go down there and fart with them, and everyone else is fucking around and farting around and messing things up. Right? Shit is hitting the fan in Venezuela. I mentioned Argentina. How about Bolivia? How about Ecuador? How about Chile? These countries are having riots in the streets. People are getting murdered. The police are losing control in many areas, and then they'll gain control and things seem fine. And then the next week or the next month, things get out of control again. It's like they're all teetering on the edge, either on a city basis with law and order, or financially with their currency, or with their food supply, right? Or, like I was talking about in Sierra Leone or the Congo, with epidemic or disease control. It's like everyone is just teetering on the edge. And who benefits the most from teetering on the edge, by the way? Politicians, because they exploit both sides of the argument for control, divide and conquer, and then they have more power, right? And speaking of that, Hong Kong. Hong Kong, it's kind of like a nation state, small little Hong Kong, going to be part of China. Protests are becoming more and more violent. And guess what? Over the weekend, now China does have the People's Liberation Army. They're now there. The past couple of weeks I've been saying, hey, China hasn't even rolled in the tanks and the army yet. Well, now the army's there. They've continued to get more and more violent, more and more aggressive. Police shootings, citizens attacking other citizens because they're too old and they don't like their attitude or their opinion, so they've set them on fire. They're murdering people. So now China is getting involved. Well, the thing that you were fearful of, you caused, you dumb fucks. This is an example of how the divide and conquer mentality of the government creates instability and fear and anger in the people who act up. And then the government says, well, I guess we better step in and take more power because the people can't seem to handle it, right? So everyone causes problems for each other and it just escalates the shit. Well, John, you've talked about, this continent and that continent. Here in North America, we got our shit straight. Really? How about Mexico? Mexico has always had the resources. It's attached to the United States by land. Why isn't it prospering like the United States? Could it be political corruption? Could it be drug lords run amok? Yeah, total, both. In fact, recently, the military of Mexico, and they're a military, they've got an air force with jets, with missiles and stuff. They've got tanks, they've got guns and rockets. Well, the military of Mexico went up and had a confrontation with drug lords and lost. They lost a battle. And what does that mean? That means drug lords control regions, areas, states of Mexico. That is not a good sign. That is one of the big fears I have, is that when shit hits the fan, there are going to be geographic warlords over neighborhoods, cities, and even small territories, depending on how much armament they have. And they're going to run it like their own little fiefdom. Mexico, what I would call a developing nation. They're not shit. I mean, Mexico City is an incredible work of infrastructure and business. It's incredible, but they can't run their country properly. It's like they're always on the verge of shit hitting the fan. And they are, with these battles with drug lords. Right next to the United States of America, they can't get their shit together. Why? It's their politics, it's their traditions and cultures, it's the attitude of the people, it's greed and corruption. It's all of those things gone bad, right? It's much easier to tear down a building than it is to build one. It'll take you 3 or 4 months to build a house, and burn it down in a day with one match. See what I'm saying? So yeah, it's not just a South American, it's not just a Middle East thing, it's not just Africa. It's not just North America. Here we go to Europe. France, remember that thing, yellow vests? Started out as older people, probably boomers, right? I saw a lot of boomers in there, Gen Xers saying, we're not going to pay your stupid gas tax, right? We're pissed off. Well, that was joined by the socialists. They stepped in, put on yellow vests, and started burning things, vandalizing monuments like the Arc de Triomphe. They started getting violent, attacking the police. The police attack back. People start getting killed, injured, maimed. And then the Muslims wanted to get involved. They couldn't be outdone. They had to put on black vests and start demanding rights and demanding citizenship and demand. Who the fuck's going to pay for it, you knotheads? Well, they don't care as long as someone else is paying for it, but that's France. How about Spain? Years ago, they had riots in Catalonia. Catalonia is trying to secede. Britain's trying to secede from the EU, called Brexit. There's Frexit. There's Italexit, right? Italy wants out. They're pissed off. Can't say Europe has got their shit together. They're supposed to be the most cultured. Oh, can't we be more like the Europeans with all these great entitlement programs and you have time off and everyone just lives a glorious life? The fuck they are. It's a shithole, where it's turning into one as much as the United States is. And I'd never do take the United States out of the equation and say, oh, we're the shining city on the hill. No, not anymore, if it ever was. Once again, we see on the TV what they want us to see. They try to put beliefs into our head so that we believe the way they want to believe. And they want to tell you, you're the good guy always. The same way in France, they say, Vive la France, we're the good guys. Right? The same way in Germany, they say, we're the good guys. Because our economic engine is so strong, we must know what's right, and we're going to dictate to the rest of Europe. Right? So, problems in France, you bet. In Spain, well, the Catalonia thing's back. They're beating the shit out of each other down there. Right? The Basques, they want the hell out, and they're like, hey, the Pyrenees, we were our own country once, even though you won't find it on a map. In England, there were cities burning. That can all happen again real fast. There are places throughout Europe, including England, where if you are white or if you are a citizen of that nation, you're not welcome there because they've been taken over by Muslims who claim this is a no-go zone for you because you're not one of us. Up in Norway and especially in Sweden, they've got problems. Right? The police can't do their job, won't do their job. The lawyers, the legislators, they keep passing more laws to restrict their own rights and freedoms while they give more away to people who hate them. Right? They are not civilized, in other words. If you are killing yourself and your country and your economy with stupidity, you are not an intellectual. I'm sorry. Suicide is not, right, or how do you even put killing a country, right? Countryside. You kill your country, you're not very smart. Can't make that claim, not with me. You can sell it on TV. You can make people feel guilty by using manipulative psychological tricks. Oh, you don't like those people because of their color, because of their religion. No, it's because of what they do. Right? And if they want to use their religion as the excuse for doing bad things, well, then that's on them. But they're doing bad things. I don't care what their excuse is. Bad is bad. Get it the fuck out of the country. But no, they promote it. We need more of that bad stuff. You're asking for your own demise. Europe is no exception. And what a lot of people do is they don't want to talk about what? China. They're afraid to talk bad about China, including that little Greta Thunberg, whatever the fuck her name is. Little twit that's 16-year-old running around guilting everyone else. But somehow excludes China, who is a massive polluter, who is a massive money manipulator as much as the United States, who's a massive authoritarian government as much as any other government has ever been authoritarian, that manipulates, controls, takes advantage, exploits their own people, just like every other country. China is no better. In some cases, it's a lot worse. Right? When they have to put nets up around tall buildings so that people can't commit suicide trying to get away from the slave labor that they're absolutely tied to. What kind of country is that? Right? The nobility of suicide, the desire to get out of a life that is so horrifying you would rather die. They put up nets. They won't fix the fucking problem, but they'll put nets up so you can't die. What does that say about that country? When a country controls the press, and when the press controls what the people think, so that no other variation of truth or reality or understanding or belief system can be heard, much less developed and embraced. What does that say about that country? What does it say, right, in China when you can't think for yourself? Right? In Germany, now, this week, farmers have taken to the highways and are blocking city streets with their tractors, driving around. Same thing that they did in the Netherlands, right? And so you're going to pass restrictions and tell us we can't farm? I guarantee this. Even if they manage to keep the political systems alive, the monetary systems going, the financial systems floated for the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to have a food crisis in 3 to 5 years. Never mind just the corn and wheat and soybeans here and the pork in China. Never mind the army worm and other issues. Just by not farming, they're going to create a food crisis on this planet. It is out of control, stupid. Germany, you're supposed to be smart and efficient. A bunch of idiots. Merkel has finally come out, wakes up, get this, and goes, multiculturalism doesn't work, it's a failure. Where have you been, you dumb bitch? Right? Jane, you ignorant slut. Angela Merkel, you ignorant twit. What the hell? It took this long? You don't keep doing something that's hurting you year after year, decade after decade, and then you can figure stuff out in just a couple of months, if not a year or so, and go, that's not working. Those people we let in and said, just be yourself, they're already committing more crimes than anywhere else. It's easy to assess. It's easy to fix. You do it before it becomes a chronic, acute problem. Germany, yeah, you're an economic powerhouse. You're also a bunch of fucking diddling idiots on the social side that have created cultural and traditional destruction, again, of Germany. And so I picked on everyone. But here in the United States, what have we got going? And you guys know I talk about the U.S. all the time and all the problems we have here domestically. But I wanted to take you on a trip around the world. Look at all these countries. How shit is hitting the fan. How it's right on the edge. It's teetering. Things are a little better. Things are a little worse. Things are a little better. This area's bad, but this one's great. Don't look at the bad. And then we're all interconnected. The more trouble we have here in our superpower nation and the other superpower nations, the more problems we have, guess what? Problems are going to trickle down into other countries. And as they fuck up in other countries, we get involved and it brings us down. The world isn't progressing out of issues. We're declining, right? Decadence is taking effect. And what is causing it? Immorality. And I'm not talking about Victorian prudism that needs to be brought back. I'm talking about being fucking decent human beings. And we're just not seeing it, folks. Go ahead, fight over chicken sandwiches. Black Friday is coming after Thanksgiving. What is going to happen? There's going to be pre-Black Friday shopping, Thanksgiving shopping, Black Friday, Technical Monday or Cyber Monday, and start fighting and duking it out over your favorite Elmo toy or Apple product. In fact, what have they really offered us as far as new and cool? There's really nothing new and cool. Well, we had this little gizmo, this little thing over here. That's it. We're stagnant. While decadence continues to erode away at the foundations and nations begin to fall. Okay, John, what do we do? Food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense. But think about it. I talked about a lot of nations. Some are really bad. Some have been bad. Some are getting bad now. What can you do? You can't do a lot, but you can get prepared. And I highly recommend you do that, right? Chance favors the prepared mind is yours. Semper Fi, always faithful. Be good, moral, decent, and stand up for. Say what you believe, right? The world is full of people who won't say or do anything at all. But at least as a prepper, you can take care of yourself, your family, your group, hopefully your community. And hopefully that's enough. And hopefully we have shit it's the fan light like these other nations and not something far worse. not something far, far worse, right? That's a lot of hope, right? And that's what I'm hoping for. We're going to get it no matter what. It's just how bad is it going to be? Get prepared. Do what you can. I'll talk to you again very soon. And thank you for supporting all our efforts here, for shopping at the club, right? And for sharing your comments and sharing the videos with others so that they too can learn about what the hell is going on and what they should do about it. Talk to you soon.